Hi guys, I'm here in the jockey's room with Matthew Chadwick and really appreciate the fact that we can have this conversation here, and thanks to the Jockey Club for that. So hi Matt, welcome to my show, Talking with Fen, and it's nice having you, and it's nice to see you back from holidays and recovering nicely after some of the stresses you've had last year. So I want to start off actually first of all by talking about your childhood a little bit. I know the slightly older generation know more about you in terms of how you started, how you got into horse racing as a young lad. So do you want to just share with us how that sort of came about in your life and how you knew you wanted to be riding horses?
Well, when I was younger, horse racing was never really on the radar. We were in Malaysia when I first got on a horse, I think. It was just as a pony rides for the family, weekend family sort of hobby trip, sort of just a day out. And I just really enjoyed it. I was very sporty, very active, and really loved animals. And that sort of started it. And then when we finally came back to Hong Kong, it just sort of just petered away. It's very hard, obviously, to get riding lessons in Hong Kong. And it was just more focusing on studying. But it was just the actual recruitment process of the club and riding came about only through my mother seeing an advert on the TV for recruitment, which we initially thought was a summer program, which was just a sort of riding summer program. So we didn't have any plans for that summer, so we decided to go for it and just have a go. We thought it was summer camp, so we did that, and then a couple of weeks into it, we found out it was a recruitment process, and then we were already into it, so we thought we might as well go through and see where it leads us, and that was basically the start of it. And then one day, we got a phone call saying that I'd have been accepted into the program, so it was a choice. It was just a choice we had to make at the time whether or not we wanted to leave school and take this road and try it out.
That's amazing. And how old were you when you first got on that little pony in Malaysia to when you went to the riding school?
Well, in Malaysia for 3 years before we were here, so probably about seven or 8, something like that.
That's amazing. And you graduated at what age? Like as in the riding school, you went overseas to ride, right?
So I graduated from the apprentice school in 2010.
That's amazing. And you were assigned to Tony Cruz when you came to Hong Kong?
Yeah.
And you had your riding stint overseas. Was it in New Zealand and Australia? Was it just in Australia? How did that pan out for you at that time?
So I had injuries ever since I started riding. Not due to riding, mostly due to playing football. So
really?
Yes, so I was born with a dislocated patella. So every time I bent it more than 90 degrees, my patella would come out. Wow. So before I joined, I had a reconstruction on that already, which was all good. And then I played football, and then I pulled it again, so I had to reconstruct that. Oof. And then I did it another time further down the line. So I had to do that. So I had 3 reconstructions on it. And then I was barred from playing any other sport by the club.
I bet. Yeah, that was a risk.
Either riding or
sport.
Or get out.
Really? So you were really avid. So you're really avid footballer. Like you really.
That's my sport. Yeah. Before I was riding, I love to play. That was my outlet for energy, basically. I forgot where I'm going with this now.
No, we were talking about when you had finished your apprenticeship and you were riding either in Australia or New Zealand or both. I'm not sure exactly what.
So it took me a while to get actually through my trial. I didn't actually do any trials in Hong Kong before I got sent away because it was during I think SARS or something maybe, that everything was postponed a bit and I had my injuries, so I was further back than my year group. So I actually went overseas to do all my trials.
Okay.
Over there. I was based in Queensland with Marion Thexton, and then she pushed me through my trials. But even then, there was a lot of rainfall and everything, so it kept getting postponed. It's what it seemed like would because they have so many trials in one day, it seemed like I was get them all done in a couple of weeks, but it just took longer, over a couple of months. And then so when I finally got my license, she was very good. She sent me to the country and she put me on one of her better horses, and it won, which was very good. And then it just so happened to be at that time another apprentice had just outridden his claim in New South Wales, who was attached to a big stable, Brett Bellamy. And so we basically at that time they thought it was best to do a switch over. So I went to him, Brett Bellamy, and his apprentice went to Marianne Thixton to get more rides in the provincial area. So it worked out really well for me that I was able to be allocated to such a big stable, and who was at the time one of their leading trainers there.
That's amazing. And how long did you ride for that stable? How long were you there
Well,
before you came
I was
here?
based in Australia from my first race ride to when I was brought back for about half a year.
Okay.
So I think the apprentice school during that time was going through a transitional period where they wanted to give the senior riders here more of an opportunity to go be develop into senior riders and take their own fully fledged license out, and bring back new blood. So at that time, Derek, Keith, and then myself came back, and then Ben also came back.
So the three of you were in the same year, Derek, Keith, and yourself? were
Myself
you?
and Ben, so four of
Ben,
us.
oh, that's right, 4 of you. So you all came back. And you were assigned to Tony Cruz.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that relationship and how it started. And you were a huge influence. And obviously he was on your riding career, and you were as an apprentice as well when you first came in. You guys had a formidable partnership, and you got to ride some amazing horses. So tell me a little bit about how that experience was for you on a personal level, obviously, how that experience was for you riding for that stable. And we'll talk about, obviously, California Memory a little bit later. But yeah, just tell me what that was like for you as a young apprentice coming and riding for Tony Cruz.
Well, when I was a trainee, before I went overseas, I rode a bit for him, and I rode for a few stables. And I wasn't very good, and I had quite a bit of falling off practice.
Okay.
But he obviously saw something, and he took me under his wing and decided he wanted to indenture me when I came back. So that I was really happy about that, obviously, and it's been a wild ride. When I came back, he supported me fully, and I think again it was another transitional period because I think Felix, who was his retainer, was just retiring at that stage. So, and also Marco Choi, who he had as apprentice, was just finishing his time. So I came at a
At the opportune time, right?
For to come in such a big stable and with so much talent in a stable. So I was given so many opportunities, and it was very pressurized. But he would go through things. But he was very upfront with how he wanted his horse to ride and what he expected. So I knew every time going back to work, it was it was going to be there's always going to be a story to tell.
Right.
But in a good way. In a good way. He was tough, but you look back on it, it's
And you were
almost
glad he was
a
sort of tough
laughable
in a way. Yeah.
story. It's great. It's great the way it panned out.
That's amazing. And one of your successes, obviously, can we have that? Can I grab that off you guys? Thank you so much. Ray was kind enough to give this to us. So I'll let you hold that because that's very special.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that little horse and what he did for you in your career and the bond that you had, the connection that you had.
He came about quite as a sort of understated horse because he had trouble acclimatizing, we thought, and none of the big riders wanted to ride him. He had some quirks about him, and we found out that the main issue was with him when they didn't geld him properly. There was one left in there.
Right.
And he was feeling a bit of pain. So once they figured that out and took it out, he exploded on the racing scene. But I was just lucky enough to be at the right time in the right place, I guess. And after that, it was just a matter of trying to stay on him, because it was a big roller coaster. and he took me through some really good times and some rocky periods, because he
ones.
was a horse that had to be ridden in a certain way, which I wasn't accustomed to at the time. And he was not an overly big horse. He had to be well balanced and had to be interacted with it in the right way, because he could get very headstrong and on his toe, and because of that he wouldn't, if he wasted too much energy before the race, he wouldn't be able to finish properly. So a lot had to be done in the mornings to help him
To get him ready
temper
and
down and
right.
in the right mind frame for the race, because he had the ability, without a doubt. It was getting him to use it in the right way.
So thanks for sharing that with California Memory. And Hong Kong is it's a tough place to ride. It's a tough place sometimes. When things are going great, they're great, obviously, like in most places. You've suffered a lot of injuries lately, and like you said, you've had your ups and downs, through the course of the years here in Hong Kong. How challenging has it been for you on a personal level, with your family, with your wife, to work through the frustrations and the stresses of being injured, not being able to ride, then coming back and trying to get on rides? How has that affected you on a personal level?
It's very hard to explain, because professionally it seems pretty simple. You come back, you do your best, you put on the effort. And I've always tried to keep them separate, which is still a learning curve till now. And in a way, it's not possible. It's not possible to keep it completely separate. Especially as the kids grow older, they want to know more about the job and what we do, and they find more interest and everything. So it's still a learning curve for me. But over the first few years, because I don't know how many injuries I've had, but I went through like 4 or 5 seasons where, maybe not as many, maybe 3 or 4 seasons where it was really low. I was getting injured every season, and every time I came back, it seemed like I was getting knocked back down to the ground. In a way, in racing, you're better off to have one long period of time off and then get it over and done with, and then come back fresh and be able to keep the dominoes running once you hit the ground. But that was never the case. It was always half a season out, another half a season back in, and then out again for like 3 seasons consecutive. So at that time I was still quite young, so I was just taking it as probably much responsibility for it, looking back on it now. And to be honest, there probably wasn't much I could do about it. They were pretty freak accidents in the gates and jumping off. Like for once, I had my ACL and my LCL ruptured, and that was just in the gates. One of the horses leaned on me, and you can't do anything about that. Another time, the doctors reckoned I was riding with a broken foot already, and I didn't realize it until I jumped off one and I couldn't walk properly. So those sort of things, at the time you don't know much about, and you can't really do much about. So it's just unfortunate, I guess. But personally wise and mentally wise, I probably could have handled it maybe a bit better. I probably was more introverted about it and kept it to myself. Now with what the club's doing and what a lot of sports institutes are doing, they've got a lot of more outlets to see, and I've probably been more so better with my family, talking as well, and been more open about it. So I think that shows in general in sport, but also on a personal level, I think it's better. So the main thing is just to have the right people around you, which I've always had, but it's about being expressive about it, and I say I'm still learning as well, and I'm not, because I still want to be able to keep my profession to myself and what I do and keep it separate, but it's not possible, because what you do and everything affects your family and how your way of life. So there's tough choices to be made, and you've got to find the right balance between it all.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know it's not easy, to talk about stuff like that, but I think you're right. I think that, sharing, especially with your wife and your family, and the good people in your life that are there to support you, I think is it's
Yeah,
really important, and it's growth. I mean, like you said, you're maturing, and you're learning to cope with it differently, and I think that's fantastic. So
yeah, it's all about communication within the right people, and learning to communicate in the right way. Because I said previously, when you are when you want to keep things to yourself, it's hard not just to talk about it, but the way you talk about it and the way people accept it is also on your mind, and how and can change the way the scenario acts out as well. So
Absolutely.
it's also intriguing the way it happens when you sit back and you go over it again in some way. It's very intriguing psychologically how people react to different things and the way they
Exactly.
talk to each other.
Yeah, that's fascinating and very true, though. And the more, a lot of times when it comes to injury and personal stuff and what you're going through, I think that the more information you give, sometime it's power. Information is power, and then it can be used in a negative or a positive way, depending on who you're sharing that information
Sure.
with.